If you love talking character creation for Baldur's Gate 3, or you just really want to try playing a wizard who is an unkillable tank in that game, then you're going to enjoy this one. Welcome to D4. Hey everybody, so here at D4, each week I take a deep dive into character builds for my favorite role-playing games. Usually that means Dungeons & Dragons. Today it's another slew of Baldur's Gate builds. I like to theorycraft about them, I often crunch numbers about them, not so that I can tell you like the right way or the best way to play a certain character, but to explore one potential way to build a character that is both really fun but also powerful to play. So if you enjoy creating characters for your role-playing games almost as much as you enjoy playing the actual game itself, or if you're just looking for tips or ideas on how to build something that you're thinking about playing, then welcome home. This is where you belong, and I am so glad that you're here. Thanks for watching. My name is Colby. Really quick, if you would be interested in getting a written cheat sheet, step-by-step guide to help you recreate these characters without having to go back and rewatch the video or take notes, I would appreciate it if you would consider joining the channel as a member. There's a button down there. For just a couple bucks a month, you get access to the library of write-ups that I create for each one of my builds, and it's just a nice way to support me and to support the channel. So huge thank you and shout out to all of my channel members. You guys are awesome. I could not do this without you. And to everybody else, you guys are awesome too. Just watching and liking and subscribing, especially, and commenting and ringing the notifications bell. Any and all of those are also great ways to support the channel. So thanks for doing any of them. Okay. Yes, the Baldur's Gate 3 extravaganza continues. I love this game. You love this game. Everybody loves this game. There are things about this game that, frankly, I would love to see adopted into D&D. To be fair, there are also things about this game where I wish Larian would incorporate the D&D rules a little more closely. And man, do I ever hope that they will come out with an expansion for the game where they're adding more subclass options. And maybe the Artificer as well? Larian? Because one of, if not my favorite things about this game is playing around with the absolute theme park that is character creation and finding fun and interesting ways to build characters and at what level I would respec and into what, etc., etc. It's so fun. So yes, today I've got 4 more build ideas to share with you guys, but first let me reply to a couple of comments that I'm seeing in the comments section a lot lately. A lot of people are asking me to do builds based on magic items or to recommend magic items for particular builds. Longtime viewers of this channel know that this is something I've always refrained from doing in my D&D videos because it's really hard for me to just know with any kind of surety what magic items you may or may not be able to get at your table in your campaign, right? But in BG3, that argument doesn't really hold as much water. We kind of know everything that's in the game, and most of the time we know where we can get it, which NPC we have to kill, which quest we have to complete, what vendor we can talk to. So it's a lot easier to say, this is how you get this magic item, and here's a build that you can make to really take advantage of it. That said, I don't think I'm going to go down that road. I'm not saying never, but I really like to make builds that just kind of work regardless of the magic items that you have and kind of just leave it up to you to potentially enhance the build via magic items. But also, there are so many magic items in this game that trying to sift through all of them to pick like the best ones to do builds around might just be a task too monumental for the amount of time that I have in a day currently. I might change my mind. Feel free to keep asking, but it's a probably not, for now at least. But then number 2, a lot of people are also asking me to do a video where I recommend a build for the entire party, or more specifically, a thematically appropriate build for each origin character / NPC party member, right? Shadowheart, Karlach, who, by the way, is absolutely the best companion in the game, no question. She is totally like Mass Effect's Garrus of Baldur's Gate, and you cannot convince me otherwise. But anyway, yeah, can I do a build for each of them? And part of me kind of wants to say, yeah, just go through each of the other Baldur's Gate 3 build videos that I've made and like pick one for each of the companions, right? Do the Cleric Bard build for Shadowheart from that first Baldur's Gate video. That's actually what I'm using on Shadowheart at the moment, and it's insanely good. And I mean, at least she still has one level of Cleric in that build, right? Or like the Gloomstalker Rogue build for Astarion from that second video that I did. I will admit, the idea is still very interesting to me, and especially if I kind of further restrict myself to really kind of try to stick predominantly with the class that the character starts out as, right? So I'm gonna say maybe on that one. All right, I have no other preamble for the video today, so let's jump into amazing builds for Baldur's Gate 3 Volume 4. And also, I'm super excited this week to once again have Magic Spoon as a sponsor for the video. More yummy cereal. Okay, hopefully you guys know this by now. Magic Spoon makes the best cereal, especially if you're trying to be thoughtful about your carb and or sugar intake, but you don't want to sacrifice flavor. 4 to 5 net grams of carbs per serving, 0 grams of sugar per serving, crazy, and 13 to 14 grams of protein per serving. With stats like that, it's insane how good it tastes. And I mean, they have so many great flavors, like maple waffle or maple waffle. Don't forget maple waffle. There's maple waffle, and my favorite, maple waffle. And people say I never go straight class in my videos. Okay, fine, yes. The other flavors are also fantastic. Fruity, blueberry muffin, cinnamon roll. My daughter's favorite right now is frosted. Cocoa and peanut butter, and mix them if you want to, is also delicious. My wife keeps stealing my maple waffle, but I love her anyways. Just putting the finishing touches on this one, and I'm seeing that there is an announcement from Magic Spoon about 2 new limited edition flavors that they have as well. Cocoa peanut butter, so it looks like maybe they're trying their hand at multi-classing as well. And just in time for fall, pumpkin spice. Haven't tried them yet, but I can't wait to. They sound delicious. You guys should totally check them out. Scan this QR code that's been up here the whole time, or just go to magicspoon.com/D4. If you do either of those things, that's how they know I sent you, so I would appreciate it if you would use that method. And if you use the code D4 at checkout, they'll give you $5 off your order. What's more, again, Magic Spoon, they are so confident in their product that they offer a 100% happiness guarantee. If you don't like the cereal, I can't imagine that you wouldn't, but if you don't, they will refund your money 100%, no questions asked. So you've got nothing to lose. Try it out for yourself, see how delicious it is. Big thanks to Magic Spoon, and let's get back to the build. Maple waffle. All right, build number 1. The Critlander. Yes, I know. I have a doppelganger. You have all told me a million billion times. Homelander plays D&D? I still don't really see the resemblance, to be honest. But I don't know, maybe I'm just in denial. Or maybe I'm just trying to pull the wool over your eyes and keep you in the dark about my true alter ego. But anyway, yeah, for those who don't know, way back in the day, a couple of years ago, someone in the comment section started calling me Critlander as a joke, and for a minute there, the moniker seemed to stick a little bit in the comment section. So partly as a joke, I decided to make a D&D build called the Critlander, right there. And you know what? It was pretty dang good. In fact, to date, it does more burst damage in a single round of combat than almost any other D&D build that I've ever done. But there is one teeny weeny caveat there with that build, and it's that the big damage that it could do really only worked against humanoids. And to be fair, that is a pretty severely limiting thing in most D&D campaigns. But in Baldur's Gate, I'm not so sure. It seems to me like there are a lot more humanoid creatures in this game, even at higher levels, than I tend to see at my own D&D table, so I think the concept might be a little more viable here. Anyway, it's all based around this concept, guaranteeing ourselves a critical hit, and then when we do, unloading all the dice we can so we can double up on all that damage. This means, for this build, we are making ourselves a Sorcadin, a paladin sorcerer. And I will preface it with this. Sorcadins are great in this game, and so even if you are not fighting humanoids, it's still going to be really strong. Just maybe not quite to like the astronomical levels that it will be when we're fighting humanoids. All right, at level 1, for our starting class, I think you could actually start Sorcerer or Paladin here, honestly. I'm tempted to start Sorcerer because, unlike Pallies, Sorcerers have Constitution saving throw proficiency, which means better concentration checks, right? But Even though we are going to be concentrating on a spell for our burst damage, our nova damage, there is a really high likelihood that our target is not going to survive even a single round, meaning that we won't really need to hold on to that concentration for as long as we otherwise might. What's more, starting Paladin means that we're going to be playing this character in the style that we'll be playing them throughout their career right from level 1, and I really like that idea. Plus, you only get heavy armor proficiency if you start Paladin at level 1, and I do want heavy armor so that I can dump my dexterity and not suffer on my armor class as much, because this character is going to be mad, multiple ability score dependent. For our starting ability scores then, make sure that you get a 16 charisma, a 16 strength, and a 14 constitution. And by the way, yes, I am aware that there are things that you can do in the game, certain quests you can do, conversations you can have to raise your stats. So sometimes you're going to want a 17 in your most important stat because there's a way to get a +1 to your favorite stat fairly early in the game, right? I just assume that you know when that happens, you can go back, respec your character, and get yourself up to an 18 by giving your most important stat a 17. So I'm not going to really talk about it, adjust later as necessary. And I'm going to change the way that I talk about equipment, I think, for my BG3 builds. In D&D, I always recommend make sure you grab these things for your starting equipment. In Baldur's Gate, you just start with what you start with based on your class, right? The real question is, what are we going to want for equipment on this character eventually? For us, it's going to be heavy armor and the best two-handed melee weapon you can find. Now, at level 1 in this game, Paladins get their subclass, right? Their Oath. And I think I'm going to go with Devotion on this build. I particularly like their level 3 feature. At level 1, Devotion Pallies just get Holy Rebuke, which tells us that we can give ourselves or an ally a buff that returns 1d4 of radiant damage when they're hit by a melee attack. That sounds kind of cool, but it's got two big drawbacks. One, it takes an action to use, and 2, it only lasts for 2 turns. As a result, I can't imagine using this, like, ever. If it were a bonus action, sure. If it lasted longer, sure. Otherwise, I mean, it takes our channel Oath charge, which we only get back on a short rest. I guess if I really had nothing better to do with my action, then maybe, but it seems unlikely. Speaking of things that I'll probably never use, we also get Divine Sense at this level. Oh wait, this is Baldur's Gate, not D&D. Divine Sense is actually not bad. It gives us, as a bonus action, advantage on attacks against Celestials, Fiends, and Undead. Now again, it only lasts for 2 turns, and again, it's only usable per short rest, but in those situations when we don't otherwise have advantage against those creature types, it's not bad. But best of all, here at Pally 1 we get Lay on Hands, and that's just a really nice way to heal ourselves or an ally without having to use spell slots, and that's nice because we got plans for those. At level 2, we get a fighting style, and I think I'd probably go Great Weapon Fighting here. In D&D 5e, Great Weapon Fighting is oft maligned as an inferior choice because it doesn't actually add much damage. In BG3, however, it's a little better because when we roll a 1 or a 2 for damage with our two-handed weapon, we're told that we now get to re-roll. But in this game, it's not just the weapon damage, but also any damage we might be adding to that attack, like, say, for Divine Smite. So this brings the average damage up a decent amount, in those instances anyway. It's still not amazing, but if we're really trying to eke out as much damage as possible, it's the way to go. Pallies get spells at level 2, and I'm probably just taking the usual suspects here. Bless is one of the best buffs in game, and someone in your party should probably always be using it, I think. Cure Wounds is a nice backup heal if you are out of Lay on Hands points anyways. Compelled Duel is nice for tanking. Divine Favors, an okay little damage bump, but we are going to want to save as many of our spell slots as possible for, yes, Divine Smite, which we also get at this level, telling us that when we hit with a weapon attack, we can spend a spell slot to do an extra 2d8 of radiant damage, plus 1d8 more for each spell slot higher than first level that we expend.
Phase 1 of Critlander complete.
So yeah, with Divine Smite secured, it's time to, at level 3, get some Sorcerer levels so we can get a little crazy, so we would be a Sorcerer 1, and that means we get our Sorcerer subclass as well right off the bat. And I think on this build, I'd probably go with Wild Magic, because it's fun and a little crazy. I know. Longtime viewers are like, where is Colby and what have you done with him? I don't generally like random things that I can't control on my D&D characters, despite the fact that, yes, I know we're always rolling dice. But maybe I'm just a little more willing to go like fast and loose in a video game. I don't know. The real draw for me with the subclass is the Tides of Chaos feature, which tells us that once per short rest, we can activate it to get advantage on our next attack roll, save, or ability check. And I just like having guaranteed advantage when I can get it. The key feature for most people, though, for Wild Magic is the Wild Magic Surge feature, right? And this tells us that every time we cast a spell of first level or higher, there's a chance that something crazy could happen. It might cast the blur spell on every creature in an area, or let you swap the location of 2 creatures when you cast a spell going forward, or transform everyone into a cat or a dog. Yeah, it can get loco. And to be fair, kind of awesome and potentially hilarious. I actually would love to hear like your favorite Wild Magic Surge stories to date. I bet you got some doozies. So let me hear about them in the comments, please. As for spells we should be taking at Sorcerer 1, I'd go just like Firebolt or Ray of Frost for a ranged damage option, Shield for a strong defensive option, maybe Magic Missile when you just really need to make sure something takes some damage, but otherwise, pick your favorite. At level 4, we would be a Sorcerer 2, and that means we get sorcery points. We get 1 sorcery point per level, and we use them to either create more spell slots for ourselves or use them on meta magic to enhance our spells in a variety of ways. At this level, we get a few nice meta magic options, my favorite of which being Twin Spell. This lets us, for a number of sorcery points equal to the spell's level, cause a spell that normally affects only 1 target to instead affect 2. And this can work on more than just damage spells, right? It could be buffs for your allies, for example. The strongest undoubtedly being Haste, which we don't have yet, and I'm not really building around on this character, but yeah, Twin Haste is just OP. But the even better meta magic option for this build, potentially, is going to be available for us at next level, level 5, where we'd be a Sorcerer 3, because yes, now we can get Quicken Spell, which lets us, for 3 very expensive sorcery points, cast a spell that normally takes an action to cast, as a bonus action instead. And this is just in time for the bread and butter spell that we want to quicken, because we also get 2nd level sorcerer spells here, and that means we can get, among other things, Hold Person. Now, there are a lot of great control spells in D&D and BG3, many of which I talked about in my Control Freak build from the last BG3 builds video, but one that is perhaps exceptionally unique among control spell options is Hold Person, and its cousin Hold Monster, right? Because these spells don't just incapacitate our target or prevent them from doing anything, but they actually inflict the paralyzed condition, which means that attacks against that enemy made from within 10 feet or 3 meters not only have advantage to hit, but are automatic critical hits. And since critical hits double not only the weapon damage, but all dice-based damage of an attack, so like not flat modifiers, right? It's not going to double the damage from your strength modifier. Then yes, when we apply Divine Smite to that attack, and thanks to multiclassing, we now have 3 2nd level spell slots to smite with for 3d8 each, right? Those would double, as well as the, say, 2d6 from a greatsword if we were using one, for a total of 6d8 plus 4d6 on that single attack, plus any other modifiers we might be adding from a magic weapon, from our strength, etc. So yes, at this point, when we were ready to just blow something up, our turn would basically go like this. You'd Quicken Spell Hold Person as a bonus action, and then, assuming that the enemy fails their save against it, you run up and you Divine Smite attack them, dealing around 45 damage on average for that single hit, meaning that since we're only level 5, we probably just one-shotted whatever we were attacking, or nearly so. Now, some of you may be asking why we'd go Paladin 2, Sorcerer 3 for a single critical smite attack when we could just go Paladin 5, get extra attack, and be able to smite twice on the same target for roughly the same damage. In fact, probably a little bit more on average, since we'd be adding our flat modifiers to the damage on both attacks, right? To you, I would say, good point. The reality is the damage over the entire round against that enemy is probably going to be stronger with Hold Person, because there are 3 other people in our party that could also be making attacks against that enemy, right? And you might not otherwise have advantage on your target, so you're more likely to miss on one of those attacks if you had extra attack. You're also shutting down that enemy, keeping them from doing anything to harm your party. So there are plenty of reasons to still go this route, but also, sure, the enemy might make their save against Hold Person, or they might not not be a humanoid. More importantly though, I think, after our Nova round, if we went this route that I've laid out, we wouldn't have extra attack, meaning our damage on subsequent turns goes way down. Thus, sure. If it were me, I probably would go Paladin 5 first. I mostly just wanted to go the route that I went to show you the kind of core concept that we're going for here, right? Not necessarily to say this is the optimal path to take to get there. Yeah, regardless. Assuming that we did go the route that I've laid out, at this point, level 6, our most important priority is to get to extra attack. So yes, it's back to Paladin here, making us a Pally 3. That means we get Divine Health, so that we're immune to disease. Fantastic. And then we get a couple more uses of our Channel Oath feature. For Devotion Pallies, that means we get Turn the Unholy, which is like the Cleric's Turn Undead, but better because it works on both Undead and Fiends, making them run away from you for 3 turns if they fail their save against it. But the main reason that I wanted to go Devotion on this build was for the Sacred Weapon Channel Oath option that they get. This lets us use an action to increase our weapon's hit chance by our Charisma modifier for an entire minute. Now, since it takes an action, this is probably only something that I would do if I could get it off before combat started. Fortunately, in BG3, this is a lot easier to predict than it tends to be in D&D, right? It's pretty easy to just like see where the enemy is, get up to the point at which they're about to see you, but then put yourself in turn-based mode and buff yourself up, right? Have somebody cast Bless, use Sacred Weapon, have someone cast Haste on you if you've got it in your party, and then run in the next turn, leaving you with 9 rounds of your buffs left, which is usually plenty of time to end a combat encounter. Now, if we have advantage, we're not going to often need that, +3 to hit here based on our Charisma modifier, but I do really like it nevertheless, just to really ensure that we land those all-important big hits when it matters most. Especially since at level 7, we'd be a Pally 4, and that means we get our first feat, and I want to take Great Weapon Master. As you probably know by now, this feat gives us a flat 10 more damage to our weapon attacks made with two-handed melee weapons, but at the cost of a -5 to hit. Well, with an extra +3 to hit from our Charisma modifier, that penalty is a lot less painful. Now, alternatively, you could totally just increase your Charisma here instead, or Strength, obviously, but I kind of feel like with all the ways you can potentially increase your strength, especially in this game, whether via items or without giving any spoilers, quests you can accomplish and conversations you can have, it's a little tougher to get that Charisma modifier up, I feel like. And a better Charisma is, among other things, going to help ensure that your Hold Person spell actually sticks. So, super important. But in the end, Great Weapon Master just increases our damage so effectively, even if it doesn't get doubled on a critical, that I just think it's the best choice here. Don't forget, thanks to multiclassing, we do have 3rd level spell slots now so that we could smite for potentially 4d8, and that's 8d8 on a critical. At level 8, we would be a Paladin 5, and we finally get extra attack. So now we could potentially make 2 smite-infused critical hits during our Nova round, which is just insane damage. And of course, that would be 4 if we were hasted. So make sure someone's putting haste on you. We also get 2nd level Paladin spells here, and there's honestly nothing I'd consider a must-have here, so go ahead and grab Aid for a nice party-wide maximum hit point booster and heal, and Lesser Restoration for a friendly cure-all. But then from this point on, levels 9 and 10, sure, you might want to get to Paladin 6. Aura of Protection is really fantastic after all. But if you were just focusing on damage above all else, I'd probably grab a couple levels of Fighter so you could get Action Surge, letting you, if hasted, make 6 smite-infused critical hits on your turn, which is absurd. But then levels 11 and 12 would definitely be back to Sorcerer for better spells, higher spell slots, for bigger smites, more sorcery points, and it would even get us to 3rd level sorcerer spells so that we could be using haste, for example, if we were fighting something other than humanoids, or if you've already got someone consistently using haste, sure, hypnotic pattern, fear, slow. There are lots of great concentration-based spells for sorcerers. All right, that is the Critlander. Let's move on to build number 2, the Wizard Tank. Okay, this one is my favorite build this week, so I am super geeked out to share it with you guys. You want to be a tank, but you want to be primarily a spellcaster? No, not a paladin, but an actual full caster? No, not a cleric. You want access to the best spells in the game, dang it. Okay, yeah. I think we can get there. So a couple of years ago, I did a wizard tank build. The thumbnail looks like that. It was super fun. one of my most ever viewed videos, and it actually worked really well in game. I tried it out. Here's the problem. It was pretty heavily dependent on the Armorer Artificer, and that is not a class that exists in BG3 yet. So what's a wannabe Gishy tank to do? Well, that kind of depends. Are you looking to just be really hard to kill while throwing out spells, or do you actually want to be doing things to draw enemy fire while being hard to kill and throwing out spells? In my book, a tank isn't really a tank unless they're doing the latter, right? And unfortunately, no, we are not going to be doing a lot of like taunting on this build. What we're doing instead is making a full spellcaster who is incredibly hard to kill. And to be fair, there actually are a lot of things on this character that we will be able to do to help protect our allies, but maybe since we don't really have much by way of a taunt, I shouldn't call it a tank. The reality is this build would be a super solid solo character option for those who are interested in trying to solo the game without any companions. When I was testing this, I actually soloed a few like big fights against multiple enemies, and I never took a single point of damage. If that sounds fun, you're gonna love this. All right, at level 1, for our starting class, let me just say this. If you did want to do a version of this build that actually had the ability to encourage enemies to attack you and not your allies, go ahead and start Fighter here, getting to Fighter 3 so that you could take Battle Master, and that would let us get Goading Attack, right? And that's kind of a soft taunt. I did that on my tank build from my second BG3 video, coupled with Paladin. I think it worked pretty well, made a pretty good tank. For this build, I didn't want to make such a heavy investment. 3 levels is a lot. Now, you might also be thinking, hey, we could go 2 levels of Paladin here to get Compelled Duel. The problem with that route is we need a high Charisma to get Compelled Duel to stick reliably, and we're not going to have the ability score to pull it off. Instead, I'm going to recommend starting Cleric here at level 1 for a couple of reasons. First off, heavy armor proficiency. We're making durability our #1 priority. A few different cleric subclasses will get us heavy armor proficiency, so that's great. Secondly, they have some pretty decent support and survivability based spells, even at level 1, but maybe more importantly, as a full caster, taking a cleric level won't slow down our spell slot progression, like fighter or even paladin would, right? As for our starting ability scores, we want a 17 strength, a 16 intelligence, and a 14 constitution. We need strength to hit our enemies, intelligence for most of our spell casting, and constitution because, yeah, we're trying to be tanky, right? Now, you actually could swap strength and constitution here, making you hit less reliably, but be a little more survivable. In my tests with this build though, my survivability was actually kind of through the roof, so I think higher strength is the way to go here, personally. For equipment, eventually we're going to want to have the best heavy armor possible, a shield, and our favorite D8 weapon, all of which we will be able to get because at Cleric 1 we get to choose our subclass, and we are going with the War domain. Naturally. You don't have to, of course. It felt most fitting for me, conceptually, thematically, but Life, Nature, and Tempest would also get us heavy armor proficiency. I like War best for this build. As such, we'll get heavy armor and martial weapon proficiency, but then we also get the War Priest feature, which tells us that 3 times per long rest, when we take the attack action on our turn, we can make another weapon attack as a bonus action. As for the spells we pick up at Cleric 1, again, keep in mind that Cleric spells are going to be reliant on our Wisdom modifier, and our Wisdom modifier is going to suck, so take stuff that just works. Bless and Healing Word, of course, Guidance. Now, War Clerics get Shield of Faith and Divine Favor for free. Divine Favor to add damage to your attacks, and Shield of Faith to increase armor class by 2. We could, of course, cast that on ourselves, but it's not a bad choice to put on an ally, so that even though we're not taunting our enemies, at least we're doing something to still protect our squishiest friend, right? One other cantrip that I'll say we need to grab. Blade Ward. We could get Blade Ward with other classes that we're going to be going into, but it's available to us here. We cast it as an action, and it gives us resistance to all bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, which is most of the damage that we'll be taking in this game. And resistance will actually be more important on this character than a high armor class, for reasons that I'll get into later. So this might be worth using even if you aren't having an ally like cast Warding Bond on you, for example, which would give you resistance to all damage. Fortunately, Blade Ward is much better in BG3 than in D&D because it lasts for 2 turns, not just 1. So even though it takes an action to cast, you could just cast it on yourself every other turn if you really wanted to. And there's going to be an argument for doing doing so. Again, we'll talk about it in a second. At level 2, we are going to jump into our main class for this build, the Wizard. As a Wizard 1, we get Arcane Recovery, which lets us recover some spell slots. It's always handy. And then we get Wizard spells. I'd be sure to grab Shield if we wanted to be really hard to hit, and maybe False Life for some temporary hit points, though we will have a regular source of temporary hit points before too long, and don't forget, temporary hit points don't stack, right? You just get them from one source or the other. Other than that, just grab some things for damage. Ray of Frost, Shocking Grasp is nice, we'll be in melee most of the time, but maybe more importantly, control. Tasha's Hideous Laughter will incapacitate at least one enemy if they fail their save against it, and again, that's really going to help keep our allies safe. I mean, arguably, that's going to do a better job of keeping our allies safe than just taunting a single target would, right? But at level 3, things start to get really good, because we would be a Wizard 2, and as such, we get our Wizard subclass, and we are going, as we must, with Abjuration. This is one of my favorite Wizard subclasses, and I love it more in BG3 than I do in D&D, primarily because of the Arcane Ward feature that we get at this level. Now, Arcane Ward works very differently in Baldur's Gate than it does in Dungeons & Dragons, so D&D vets, listen up. Here's how it works. Each time we cast an Abjuration spell of 1st level or higher, we get a stack added to our Arcane Ward equal to the spell's level. So 1 stack for a 1st level spell, 2 for a 2nd level spell, etc. We can get a number of stacks equal to 2 times our Wizard level. Then, if and when we take damage, that damage is reduced by a number of hit points equal to the number of stacks on the ward. So, for example, as a Wizard 2 currently, if we cast 4 1st level Abjuration spells, which we could since we multiclassed with Cleric, we've got the spell slots to do that, then we would have an Arcane Ward with 4 stacks on it, the cap, at the moment. The next time we took damage, the damage would be reduced by 4, and at that point, the number of stacks goes down by 1 to 3. The next time we get hit, the damage is reduced by 3, and the number of stacks goes down by 1 to 2. If we then cast a 2nd level Abjuration spell, the Arcane Ward would go back up to 4 stacks. Make sense? Okay, awesome. This is so good, and it's going to get so much better. So with the Abjuration subclass in our pocket, we need to take a quick detour here at level 4 into Warlock for 2 very important things. As a Warlock 1, we get our subclass, and while I'm tempted to say just pick your favorite, instead I'll say let's go Fiend. Go a different route if you want to, but Fiends get Dark One's Blessing, which gives us some temporary hit points when we kill an enemy, so it seemed most fitting as a tanky character. Again, you're going to have a source of temporary hit points that we're going to try and keep on ourselves as often as we can, but sometimes you won't have the ability to do so, so a nice backup. But then we get Warlock spells here, and while Fiends get Burning Hands and the command spells for free, Warlocks are charisma-based casters, so those aren't going to do us a whole lot of good. No, the spell that we are most excited about here is Armor of Agathis. This is actually going to be huge for both our survivability and honestly is going to be a major source of damage for us as well. This spell is incredible, especially on this build. It gives us 5 temporary hit points, but then when we're hit by a melee attack, it returns 5 points of cold damage to our attacker, so long as we have at least 1 of those temporary hit points on us still. If we upcast it, which we should do as often as possible, both the temporary hit points and the damage returned go up by 5 for each spell level. And here's the beauty of it. If you've got your Arcane Ward up, the ward absorbs the damage first, and then any left over would be applied to your temporary hit points. And depending on the size of your ward and how hard the enemy is hitting and what other damage reduction things you might have on yourself, this will often mean that you take 0 damage, but actually return the full amount of damage from Armor of Agathis. And when that happens, you will laugh with delight every single time. But wait, there's more. Because at level 5, we would be a Warlock 2, and that means we get Eldritch Invocations, and that means we can get Armor of Shadows. And Armor of Shadows lets us cast Mage Armor at will without spending a spell slot. And guess what school of magic Mage Armor is from? If you said Abjuration, you win. Now, Mage Armor gives us an armor class of 13 plus our dexterity modifier if we're not wearing armor. So, here's what you do. You take off your armor and you cast Mage Armor on yourself. It didn't cost you a spell slot, but it definitely added 1 to your Arcane Ward stacks, because Arcane Ward stacks increase when you cast an Abjuration spell. It doesn't have to be a wizard spell, right? You then put your armor back on and the Mage Armor disappears, but your Arcane Ward stack, still there. You then take your armor back off, and you cast Mage Armor again. Rinse, repeat until your Arcane Ward is completely maxed out. Now, some of you may find this distasteful, cheesy, metagamey. You might think it's a bug that will be patched by Larian. You might be right, but I really hope you're wrong. Keep in mind, this is actually something that you can currently do in D&D 5e, and it's totally by the book. The only difference is that in D&D, you don't have to sheepishly display your undies to your party to do it. There's no rule in D&D about casting Mage Armor if you have other armor on. It's just not gonna do any additional benefit for you. You can still cast it, and with 2 levels of Warlock, you can cast it for free and stack up your Arcane Ward. So, at level 6, now that we've got our free max capacity ward in place, it is time to go back to Wizard. That means we get 2nd level spells. Now, we could just continue stacking our defensive capabilities, in which case Blur is phenomenal because it gives your enemies disadvantage on their attacks against you, or Mirror Image is worth considering because it makes enemies sometimes hit your illusory images instead of you. Though I'm not actually sure in that case, if they were to hit your illusion, would it still return Armor of Agathis damage if you had Armor of Agathis on? I don't think so, but I haven't actually tested it. So if you know, let me know in the comments. But what I would probably do instead on this character is focus on more control options. Hold Person, Web, Crown of Madness. I mean, play around with it, and if you feel like your survivability is good enough, and my guess is that it will be, then focus more on control. At level 7, we'd be a Wizard 4, and that means we get our first feat, and I want to take Heavy Armor Master, because this feat gives us, first off, a +1 to our strength, so we've got a nice even 18 now, but then also tells us that if we're wearing heavy armor, all non-magical damage does 3 less to us. And that might not seem like a lot, but when you've got an Arcane Ward absorbing, what, 8 hit points at this level when it's maxed out, and you add 3 more from Heavy Armor Master before it even touches your temporary hit points, you are rarely going to be taking much damage from your attackers unless they're doing magic damage. And yeah, I kind of talked about this before, but keep in mind that damage resistance would also stack here. If you can get someone to put Warding Bond on you, you're going to be ridiculous, so prioritize this. It's a 2nd level Cleric spell that's going to give you resistance to all damage, as well as raise your AC and your saving throws by 1. It doesn't require concentration, and unlike in D&D, it doesn't last an hour, it lasts until your next long rest. Shadowheart, please. Now, in this scenario, Shadowheart will take the same amount of damage you do when she's got Arcane Ward on you, but honestly, you're not taking any damage on this character. And so, yeah, I think I'd just go Wizard the rest of the way with this build to increase how big our Arcane Ward can get, as well as get us access to better Wizard spells. At Wizard 6, Abjuration Wizards get Projected Ward, which lets you give the damage reduction from your Arcane Ward to an ally as a reaction. So again, we don't have a taunt, but you are still really helping keep your allies safe. And at Wizard 7, you'd get 4th level spells. In that case, be sure to grab Fire Shield. This gives you resistance to cold or fire damage, your choice, and then returns 2d6 cold or fire damage to your attacker. And yes, it stacks with the damage from Armor of Agathis. And so, like, here's the thing about this build. When I was testing it out, I was actually getting frustrated by how infrequently I was getting hit. There's a decent chance that you might be actively trying to decrease your own AC here. Drop that shield, right, and equip a 2-handed weapon instead. Don't use Blur or anything else to hamper your chance to get hit. Maybe even put on some nice chainmail instead of plate mail, right, to lower that AC a smidge, because with all the reduction to damage that you have going, enemies are very rarely going to be penetrating your temporary hit points. So you could just find yourself like surrounding yourself with as many enemies as possible, actively provoking opportunity attacks, trying to control enemies on the battlefield with your concentration, thumping them when you can, and just laughing yourself hoarse while your enemies die just by hitting you over and over, while you continue to not even feel their attacks. It is so fun. Speaking of builds that are so fun, on to build number 3, the Pugilist, or maybe the Street Fighter, or maybe just the strength-based monk. So yeah, I think when most of us think about monks, we think about a dexterous martial arts-based kung fu master, right? Well, I've got some bad news for those of you who, like me actually, are in love with that archetype. In this game, strength-based monks are just way, well, stronger. The reason is simple. the Tavern Brawler feat. So let's change our paradigm here to a monk who is rough and tough. Maybe more of a Ryu than a lithe, nimble martial artist, right? Because the results are incredible. So yes, level 1. For our starting class, we're gonna go monk, and we're gonna be here for quite some time, so get comfy. For our ability scores, we're gonna want to make sure that we've got a 17 strength, a 14 dexterity, a 14 wisdom, and a 12 constitution. I'd love to have a higher con, but I want as high a dex and wisdom as I can get, because it's gonna help our armor class, among other things. Now, some of you are going to argue that you can just wear heavy armor on your monk, and you're not actually giving up all that much for doing so. It's true for the most part, but I still like going unarmored on my monk, especially in BG3, because there are so many great monk and barbarian aimed clothes that buff your stats and your unarmed strikes and things. So I'm gonna stay unarmored and kind of help me still with that Kung Fu master archetype as much as I can. Feel free to start a level of fighter or something instead so that you can get proficiency in heavy armor if you really want, and then put more points into constitution here instead of dexterity or wisdom. But for us, for our equipment, yeah, we're gonna wanna just get like the best non-armor armor that you can find, as well as anything that will increase your unarmed defense and or add damage to your unarmed strikes. As a monk 1, then yes, we get unarmored defense, which tells us that our AC is equal to 10 plus both our dexterity and wisdom modifiers if we're not wearing armor or a shield. And then we get martial arts features, which let us make attacks with unarmed strikes and monk weapons using our dexterity if it's higher, which it's not on this build. But martial arts also tells us that those unarmed strikes do a d4 of damage instead of just a flat 1 like it does for everybody else. And that will scale up with monk level. We're also told that if we take the attack action on our turn, we can make an unarmed strike as a bonus action. Better yet, in Baldur's Gate, monks get key right at level 1. We start with 2, and then we get 1 more per monk level, as well as Flurry of Blows here, which lets us spend one of those key points to make 2 unarmed strikes as a bonus action instead of the usual 1. This is going to be our bread and butter key point spender on this build, no question. At level 2, we get unarmored movement, which tells us that if we're not wearing armor or a shield, we get a 10-foot move speed increase, and that also increases with more monk levels. And for a melee character, more move speed is always a good thing. We also get more potential uses for our key points in patient defense and Step of the Wind. These let us take the dodge, disengage, or dash actions for both a key point and then our bonus action instead of an action like usual. At level 3, first up, our martial arts die increases to a d6 a couple levels earlier than it does in D&D, so that's nice. And then we get deflect missiles. This tells us that when an enemy hits us with a ranged attack, which yeah, seems to happen a lot more in this game than it does in D&D, I think, we can use our reaction to reduce that damage by a d10 plus our dexterity modifier plus our monk level. And we can even spend a key point to throw it back at our attacker, but yeah, I'm probably gonna say save those key points for Flurry of Blows, except for in the most extreme of circumstances where you might be able to finish off that enemy just using your reaction, right? Monks get their subclass at level 3, and we are going the way of the open hand. This is absolutely the best way to go for our Pugilist Street Fighter brawler. At this level, open hand monks just get a nice like add-on to their Flurry of Blows. They can add like a topple to Flurry of Blows, letting us potentially knock an enemy prone, a stagger option so they can't take reactions, or a push option which will push them 5 feet away from us. Not sure why that got nerfed from D&D's 15 feet, but whatever. I'd recommend using topple most of the time and actually starting your turn with that, since in BG3 you don't have to take the attack action before you Flurry of Blows, which is great because that lets us potentially knock an enemy prone right at the beginning of the fight and then enjoy advantage on the rest of our attacks that round against a prone enemy, right? At level 4 we get slow fall, and you might not use this a ton, but it'll be handy once in a while. It lets us use our reaction to have resistance to falling damage so that you only take half damage, right? I actually prefer the D&D version here, which could potentially let us take 0 damage depending on how high we fell from, but this is simpler and better than nothing. The thing that we're most excited about, of course, is that at level 4 we get a feat, and yes, we're taking Tavern Brawler. So I talked about this briefly in that short video that I put out a couple of weeks ago, actually, that OP in BG3, the 5 things that I thought were like way better in this game than they are in D&D. Tavern Brawler is probably probably at the top of that list. In D&D, the feat is kind of okay if you want to like try and build your character around it. It gives you more flavor than it does like mechanical power, I think. But in Baldur's Gate, it's insane. I might argue that it's too good, but I don't want them to nerf it. Anyways, first of all, it's a half feat, raising your strength by 1, so that we've got a nice even 18 now. I can't believe they made this a half feat, as though the feat weren't already amazing. But then we're told that when we use an improvised weapon, or throw something, or make an unarmed attack, then we get to double our strength modifier for both the plus to hit and the plus to damage. That is so good. I mean, Great Weapon Master adds 10 damage at the cost of a -5 to hit, and it's one of the best feats in the game. This adds, at 20 strength, 5 damage and 5 to hit to all of our hits. What? And of course there are ways to go beyond 20 strength, right? And it bumps our strength by 1. It's insane. So at level 5, we get Stunning Strike, and this is awesome when it works and crappy when it doesn't, and it usually doesn't. Especially with our mediocre at best wisdom modifier. With Stunning Strike, when you hit an enemy, you can spend a key point to try and stun them, but they get to make a constitution save against it, and they're probably gonna succeed. If they don't though, stunned is a super powerful condition to inflict on an enemy. Though in this game it only lasts until the beginning of their next turn, so it's actually even weaker than it is in D&D, at least until the new rules for 1 D&D come out. But that's okay. We are mostly excited at this level for extra attack, meaning more unarmed strikes. And yeah, in case it wasn't obvious, you're ditching weapons and just punching stuff here, right? Especially once we get Tavern Brawler. At level 6, we've got other classes to visit, but I don't want to leave Monk before Monk 6 because I want Key-empowered strikes, which cause our unarmed strikes to be magical for the purpose of overcoming resistance, but then we also get wholeness of body as an open-hand monk, and this is so much better than it is in D&D. There, it just heals us for a little bit. Here, it gives us an extra key point and an extra bonus action every turn for 3 rounds. You can only do it once per long rest, and sure, it takes an action to use, but getting 2 extra unarmed attacks with Flurry of Blows, right? Every round for 3 rounds is totally worth sacrificing a single action 1 time. Maybe best of all though, open hand monks also get Manifestation of Body or Mind or Soul, which just straight up adds an extra D4 of damage, either necrotic, psychic, or radiant, depending on which you choose, to all of our unarmed strikes. But at level 7, yeah, we are going to leave Monk behind for a little bit, and you probably know where we're going. Rogue. So as a Rogue 1, we get Expertise, letting us double our proficiency bonus in 2 skills that we're proficient in, but then we also get Sneak Attack here, although I don't think we're going to be getting much use out of it on this character. It adds damage to our attack once per turn if the attack is made with either a ranged or finesse weapon, and unarmed strikes, unfortunately, don't count as either. Now, sure, you could equip a short sword and use it once on your turn to try and get sneak attack, but you've got Tavern Brawler, and probably have gear that's adding damage to your unarmed strikes at this point, in addition to your manifestation of soul, mind, or body, right? So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe if you have just an incredible magic short sword or something, feel free to use that once per turn to get some sneak attack in, but I'm guessing that we're just going to be better off punching and kicking stuff. At level 8, we would be a Rogue 2, and that means we get Cunning Action. This lets us take the Dash, Disengage, or Hide actions as a bonus action. We could already dash or disengage, though now we can hide too and not have to spend a key point for it. It's a little redundant, but better than what we had. The real reason that we invested 3 whole levels into Rogue here at level 9 is, of course, so that we could take the Thief subclass, because that gives us the Fast Hands ability, and that means we get another bonus action every single turn. And for us, that's going to mean more unarmed strikes. Up to 6 if we have Wholeness of Body going, and the key points to spend on all of those Flurry of Blows, right? So yeah, 8 unarmed strikes in total on our turn, for a d6 plus a d4 each, plus 10 from our strength thanks to Tavern Brawler, assuming we've got a 20 strength at this point, thanks to either gear or in-game choices, plus whatever additional damage our gear might be giving us. So from levels 10 on, I think I probably just go back to Monk for the rest of this build to get more key points, as well as some great Monk features, including Key Resonation as an open hand Monk, which is just super fun, and to get our unarmed strikes up to a d8 as well. Alternatively, Sure, there's always a 2-level fighter dip for action surge, maybe a 1-level barbarian dip for some rage damage and damage resistance. Anyway, that is the strength-based monk pugilist. It's incredibly powerful. You're gonna have a blast with it. Last but not least for today, we've got the AoE cleric. When most people think, I need a good area of effect damage blaster caster, they probably think sorcerer or wizard. Maybe warlock, but very rarely do they think cleric. Well, those silly people haven't taken a good hard look at the light cleric. I used to be one of those silly people. But then I did take a good hard look, and I was blown away, pun intended, at just how incredible they could be for AoE damage. Better, arguably, than any other class. So let's dig in to why. At level 1 on this build, we're going to start off as Cleric because we need to beeline to some key features and spells that will let us be the explosion of holiness that we intend to be. For ability scores, we want a 16 Wisdom, a 16 Constitution, and a 14 Dexterity. Light Clerics don't get heavy armor proficiency, so we're going to want that 14 Dex to get the most out of our medium armor, among other things. And yeah, as for equipment, just get the best medium armor that you can and a shield. We don't need no stinking weapons. Clerics get their subclass at level 1, and like I said, we are going with the Light Cleric, and that's going to give us the Warding Flare feature at this level. This just tells us that we can use our reaction to impose disadvantage on an attacker when they hit us, potentially causing that hit to miss. It's a nice little defensive option there, and also, unlike in D&D, you can use it as often as you want, as long as you've got your reaction available. As for cleric spells that we get here, you're going to want the usuals, sure, Guidance, probably Sacred Flame for damage, Bless, Healing Word, but also light clerics get Burning Hands and Fairy Fire for free, neither of which are typically available to clerics. Burning Hands is a nice bit of AoE damage at close range, so we're building our AoE repertoire. Fairy Fire is a decent use of our concentration, if someone else is already using Bless anyways, to potentially grant advantage against all attacks made versus creatures that we hit with it, right, and fail their save against it. At level 2, all clerics get Channel Divinity. This can be used once per short rest for 2 things. First up, turn undead. This forces undead to make a saving throw or just run away from us for 3 turns, or until they take damage, which kind of sucks, actually. But then for light clerics, we can use Channel Divinity on Radiance of the Dawn, and this is our second AoE ability. It's an action to use, and it does 2d10 plus our character level in radiant damage in a pretty massive 30-foot radius. It doesn't harm allies, and though it allows for a Constitution saving throw, it still does half damage on a successful save, so it's not a bad little AoE. At level 3, we get second level cleric spells. Light clerics get Scorching Ray, a decent single target damage dealer, and Flaming Sphere for free. Flaming Sphere is a pretty okay weaponized bonus action spell. It can do a little damage to multiple enemies, so it's not a bad use of our concentration if we don't need it for buffing. At least for now. At level 4, we get our first feat, and we absolutely want to be increasing our wisdom here, as that will make all of our cleric spells more potent and harder to resist. Thus, we'll have an 18 wisdom here, or of course, if you do a certain something with a certain hag and respec your wisdom to 17, then you could be at a 20 here, right? But level 5 is the promised land for us. First of all, we get Destroy Undead. This causes our turn undead to just straight up do 4d6 damage to undead creatures and then turn them, right? And that's kind of way better than the D&D version. But the real reason that we love this level is for 3rd level spells. First of all, because clerics, uniquely, other than lore bards I guess, get Spirit Guardians. This is another thing that I talked about in that OP in BG3 video, but yeah, this spell is just so good. And I think it's even better in Baldur's Gate than it is in Dungeons & Dragons. You cast it as an action, it requires concentration, and then it just does damage to any enemy who gets within 15 feet of you, regardless of whether you move close to them or they move close to you. And yeah, it's one of the only ways that I know of to weaponize your movement in this game. And considering that you can now do damage potentially with your action, your bonus action, and your movement, it just ends up being a lot of damage to a lot of enemies. Run around the battlefield and then just nuke stuff. It's so fun. And with what shall we be nuking, you might ask? Why, with Fireball, of course. Because unique among clerics, yes, light clerics get fireball at this level too. So now we can run around softening everyone up with our spirit guardians and then blow them up with a nice burst of hellfire and damnation, turning those unbelievers to ash. Now, at level 6, with our 2 most important spells under our belt, I want to take a Druid dip. And it's because there's 2 Druid spells that I really want access to. First up, Thorn Whip. There are a few ways to get Thorn Whip in BG3, but I think the easiest and simplest is probably just to take a single level of Druid. Thorn Whip is perfect for us because it's a cantrip that will do a little bit of damage and then pull an enemy towards us. And for those of us who do damage to enemies that get close to us, that is perfect. Because there will very often be one enemy on the outskirts that you just can't quite get to on your turn, until now. I'd also be sure to grab Longstrider here, which is not available to clerics, and it increases our move speed by 10 feet. Doesn't require concentration, it lasts the entire day, and yeah, I think for obvious reasons, more move speed is going to be especially valuable on this character. Now, at level 7 and beyond, I can see us going a number of different ways actually. You might just want to go back to Cleric here. We really want more feats, and we really want more and better spell slots. Spirit Guardians does another d8 of damage for every spell slot higher than 3rd that we cast it at, right? At Cleric 8, all of our cantrips do extra damage, and not just Cleric cantrips, so Thorn Whip would now hit harder. And I want to get the mobile feat for more move speed and to not get slowed down by difficult terrain, as well as Resilient Constitution and or Warcaster to help us hold on to our concentration, which is incredibly important on this build. That said, going Rogue 3 would be worth considering here, because remember, at level 2, rogues get cunning action so that they can dash as a bonus action. And at level 3, we could go thief so that we could have 2 bonus actions to dash with, right? 2 dashes on our turn and still have our action left to fireball or thorn whip. That said, you might find that you don't actually need double dash every turn, especially if you've got someone else in your party who's going to be concentrating on the haste spell for you, because that's going to double our move speed. And if we have Longstrider up, that's going to mean like 80 feet of move speed just with haste. So yeah, if you can get that, I would highly encourage you to do so. I mean, maybe that just goes without saying, every character in every party is going to be really strong with haste, but especially this character, since then we could have both the increased move speed and get an additional action on our turn so that we could say Thorn Whip an enemy to move them into just the right spot, fireball the lot of them with our second action, and then just run in with Spirit Guardians to mop up whoever didn't get taken out by the fireball. Or, of course, double Thorn Whip, or double Fireball for that matter. If haste isn't an option, then yeah, you're probably going to want to get at least 2 levels of Rogue so that you can dash as a bonus action, if not 3 for Thief. But honestly, just have someone in your party use haste on you. Preferably a Sorcerer so that they can twin it on you and your Critlander, or Pugilist, right? So anyway, that is the Greased Lightning AoE Cleric. So powerful, so fun. Just like, I think, all of the builds that we did today, this was probably my favorite bunch of builds that I've done so far for BG3. And I kind of want to respect all of my party members to be all 4 of them. So I hope that you get to try them out in game someday and that you enjoy them as much as I have. But yes, that's the video for the week. I love you guys. You're the best. Thank you so much for all that you do for this channel, for me. It means so much to me. I hope you have a fantastic day and a really great week. And if you don't give up. I hope that you'll be kind and that you'll stay safe, and that I see you again very soon. But until then, take care. Bye. This heart in me feels like a feather but hurts like the sting of a bee. 'Cause there's a song arising, just you wait and see. Won't you take my hand and shake the world with me? There is this like folk pop duo, they're called the Well Pennies. They're so good, I am obsessed with them right now. If it sounds at all interesting to you, check them out, you'll love them. You guys want to hear an awesome story? This is actually the 3rd time that I'm recording this episode. Oh, the first time, the clip that you just heard of me singing, I accidentally had my laptop mic on and my good mic, this guy, off, and so the entire audio just sounded horrible. So I decided to re-record. I turned this mic on and forgot to turn my laptop mic off. They were off sync and I had a nice little echo. Third time's a charm, hopefully. So yeah, if I seemed a little off my game during the episode today, that's probably why. I'm battling a little frustration. I guess I just get to practice letting go of things today. So that's a fun lesson. And to everybody else, you guys suck. Do not say that. But there is one teeny weeny caveat. Come in.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, I bring treats.
Oh, so nice.
Treats for you.
You want to be in my outtakes?
Close.
My sweet wife brought me some treats because she knows how frustrated I am about having to record this episode 3 times. Skinny dipped almonds, a beef stick. I do love beef sticks.
Yes,
That's totally going in the outtakes. Well, you know what? This does make me feel better, so thank you.
you're welcome.
The only difference is that in D&D, you don't have to sheepishly display your undies to your party to do it. Why is Shadowheart wearing Lae'zel's underwear? I was really hoping you guys wouldn't notice that. Oof.